It's coming down and everything's glitchy. Everything's so glitchy. Oh, we're doing this. Okay, we're going live. Welcome. It's Saturday morning. This is Art of Rock. We do this every week. Here, join us, please. And if you're in Berlin, I apologize because I gave you the wrong time. 9 o'clock time here and stuff. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. Many of the members are here. I love you so much. You keep me going. We will keep each other going. It will be awesome. Angelspit's new track is called Pay the Butcher's Bill. And it's on Spotify and everywhere right now. But there it is on Bandcamp. Go get it. New Equester track is called... new Ice Planet 9000 track is called The Equester. It's on YouTube. Go watch it. It's good fun. Benoit has The Ravens. He just released that, and it's crazy. Go listen. It's on Spotify. Other things on Spotify which are amazing. Industrial Incisions playlist. A bunch of old cool bands and a bunch of new cool bands. Go like it. Like the whole playlist and just run through it. It's always changing, and it's fantastic. Talking about always fantastic is Empty VTV. Ba-boom. It's 24-hour, non-stop music from the bleeding edge, and you need to get onto that stuff because it's great. And there it is on Twitch. And if you've got a video, send it to them, and they will play your video because they're amazing. They also have a Patreon. Go join their Patreon. And that's my whole life. Thanks for watching. Bye. No, just kidding. I want to talk today about the kick drum. I want to talk about sound design, side compression, EQing it, EQing everything else around it. I want to talk about, but first I want to talk about 4 on the floor and alternatives to 4 on the floor. Jump right in, and Diana and Adam, it's so good to see you as always. 4 on the floor, guys. Okay, Resi, go. I know. Ivan was just like biting at it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we owe it all to Tony Thompson, but Chic and that, disco era is pretty much when that was developed, right? I mean, stop me if I'm missing an era, but rock and roll with the walking the dog and the 2, 3, 4, 1 and 3 kicks, and I guess before that. Well, hey, whatever. Mainly, the thing is Tony Thompson. Guy's a brilliant genius. He's all feel, and he's got the groove on the hi-hats on 16ths and the kick drum on every downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, in case anybody's not clear on what the 4 is, and the floor being probably an allusion to the disco dance floor, if anything. Anyhow, take it from there.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, Ivan. I know you're almost angry about this.
It 4 on the floor gets boring after a while because it is so obnoxiously predictable. It just like it just gets especially, and it gets even more noticeable with just drum machine, EDM, industrial, like us, and I get it. Like, it's very easy to write for. All the tools are pretty much built to handle it, nicely. But and this, it gets more noticeable once you've spent some time doing ballroom dancing, because over in ballroom land, 3/4 is waltz. Even like the 4/4 stuff. I mean, there's more patterns available, and tango is fun, and listen to Save a Prayer. It's a slow, quick, slow, because that's a rumba. Like there are plenty of other choices than just 4 and 4, and it'd be nice to see more of that getting used.
Yes. Hold on, I'm just
at the same time, like, I'm lazy and it is very easy to write for.
Okay, hold on. I'm just I'm listening to your voice. It's very good. Hold on. No, keep going. This is really good, especially like when you're talking about rumbas and tangos. This is going ba 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 ba
Yeah,
ba. Talk to me.
There's plenty of beat patterns out there. I spent a couple years back, spent a lot of time looking at like Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Cuban beat patterns, because like most of that stuff's it gets really fun and like anti-predictive, and you can start doing more like you have to be more actually more creative, because Four on the Floor is pretty easy to understand. But
okay, give me some alternatives to Four on the Floor.
Well, I mean 3/4 for sure. Like
hold on, no, dude, we're not doing 3/4. We're doing 4/4.
Oh no, I mean like a rumba, it's not 4/4. Well, I mean it's 4/4, but it is not Four on the Floor, because it is slow, quick, slow.
Hold on, boom, 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 boom. What's a rumba?
Yeah. I can't remember where it originated from, but
it was invented by John Rumba, wasn't it?
Yeah. Listen to "Save a Prayer," by Duran Duran.
Damn it! I don't have a rumba on this. Go ahead.
So
verbalize it for me. How does it go? With your mouth.
Bong, it's kind of a
bong.
Duh, tick tick, duh, tick tick, duh, tick tick.
I'm having a lot of. I'm sorry, man. I'm having a lot of.
If you think,
actually, verbalize it and thump your chest so I can hear it. I can't hear it. I'm so sorry.
Tick tick, duh, tick tick.
Right. Where's the beat? Where's the 1, 2, 3, 4?
Okay. 1.
Rezi, you're just banging. Stop. This is Ivan's moment.
2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Is that 1, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 1, 2, ba, ba. All right, cool. I'm sorry, man. I'm having a lot of trouble understanding. Talk to me in music and numbers.
Foxtrot is actually kind of the same, but the speed is different.
Okay. If anybody I'm so sorry. I'm having a trouble interpreting what that means.
Yeah, and for Foxtrot, it's usually slow, quick.
Bah. Okay, great. All right, I'm sorry. I don't understand. I'm so sorry. Can someone interpret for me? Say to me in numbers. It hits on the 1, the 2, and the 3, and. For example, like that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think. I know how to talk about this as a dancer better.
Okay. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. I'm just so
Oh, no. It's totally fine.
Find out. Here comes Adam. Please keep going. Hi, Adam. It's good to see you. Hands up, baby. Ivan, keep going.
Yeah, and so go listen to ballroom stuff.
Right.
Because you're going to learn way more than just four on the actually over in that world, Four on the Floor mostly doesn't exist. And this is a classic case of if you want to get better at what you do, look at stuff you don't do.
That's actually really good advice. You got me really excited about this ballroom stuff. I want to find out more. Do you want to keep ranting, or because I see Rezi's hand up?
Rezi's turn.
Okay, Rezi, take it.
Hi. The rumba can have 4 kicks to the beat just as well. It's fine. I mean, it doesn't really get us out of the 4 on the floor thing. It's just got upbeats. It's got the and 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the off 8s are the key in that. Yeah.
Right.
But you can still have the 8ths and 16ths and the 4s on the kick. It's the claves and other wood percussion stuff.
I can't fucking raise my hand.
Okay, well, Adam, just wave your hand like this, and we're going to let Rezi finish, because this is so blowing my brain right now. Rezi, keep talking.
I think the kick drum being on every downbeat isn't the real problem here. 4 on the floor, gets a bad rap when it's the same snare drum and hi-hats and other percussion beats.
Okay.
But having that pulse in there, I mean, even if you're really turning the beat around and putting accents on other stuff, you can still have the same party and really, make it a dizzying, evolving over, polyrhythmic over 3 against 4, still have the kick on that 4 beats just to sort of glue you there. Totally cool to not have it there. Totally, there's a million other ways of doing it, agreed. But rumba doesn't happen to be one that really pulls us out of that. And I don't even have an example in the context of keeping this a floor killer dance track where you don't have those 4 beats on 4 kicks on the beats. I think Adam's probably got some ideas about that too. I would love to hear.
All right, just before we finish, so I just want to make sure I understand this clearly. And this is at Ivan, so I'm going to try and verbalize a rumba. My keyboard doesn't have a rumba on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, ka-bum, 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 ka-bum. Is that a rumba? Okay, cool. Well, what's really interesting is that where the snare is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and where that snare is hitting. That's really interesting. If anybody else wants to throw in, or am I throwing this to Adam? I'm throwing it to Adam. Hold on, I'm gonna be.
Oh, there we are.
I
was muted. I'm a little bit I'm out of practice here. I don't remember how to raise my hand over here in the chat. So
just start waving manically and we'll see you.
That's what I usually do anyway.
Counting reactions.
Yeah, so well, the cool thing about Latin rhythms is that is that when you play them over 4/4s, they make some very cool stuff. So if you want to hear some of those examples in my work, I've used Latin rhythms in my remixes for Carl. I've used Latin rhythms. Like one of the ones I use it a lot in is my Cantina remix, like pop 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 pop, and a lot of those are like clave rhythms. So you have your kind of standard clave rhythm, which is what would make you think of like Bela Lugosi's Dead, like pop, pop.
Yeah. No. Do it. Tap it out.
And the rumba clave rhythms are like usually 2 slow, 3 fast. So you have like bop, 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 bop. But yeah, putting one of the things that's great about Latin rhythms is it gives a lot of texture to your percussion over that 4 on the floor. Of course, the way to break the 4 on the floor is syncopation. We were talking. I heard somebody mention waltzing when I was in the hold here. Like, I do a lot of. I mean, it's 4/4, but it's 6/8 when you get the right? Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So those kind of rhythms, like or like Depeche Mode kind of breaking it up with Personal Jesus there, it's still like it's got a very triplet heavy rhythm, ba 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 ba. So to break the 4/4ness of it, start counting in 3s or start and use the syncopations.
Yeah. Quite often what I'll do is, like kick will be on 4/4, because again, easy. But then I'll throw toms as more of an accent to it. And then snares and hats, one of those is going to become a polyrhythm at some point in the song, so that it's not only is it not the same as everything else that's gone up on top, but it's usually a misshaped, the length of it is misshaped so that it's drifting through the beat pattern as it goes along, so that it sounds more interesting, makes it, our brain interprets that as more important because it's not as predictable.
That's an important point.
I love it. So I want brains to jam on the idea of what can the kick drum do besides 4 on the floor on 4/4 time. So and
everything.
Also, Ivan, I recall that Duran Duran Save a Prayer was 1, 2, 3, 4, bang, 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 for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right. Okay, this is very interesting. So, what else can a kick drum do? Razzie, I see your hand go.
And one.
As in, boom, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Sure.
I mean, that's where you put it. That's the first degree of complexity after just 4 by 4, and then the other place you put it is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. E1, a 1, the 16th note, those 2/8.
Here's Juan. I love it. It's something I see Adam's hand. Go, Adam. Juan,
if you
see you, go ahead.
What you're talking about is syncopation. So yeah, moving the kicks away from the ones or adding more kicks. So you could do like there's so much that you could. It's all if you think about it in terms of drums, it's all your feet, right? So if you start swinging those rhythms a little bit, you get more variation and more interest. Like what Rozzy was saying about and 1, it's like if you do like 1 and 2 and 3 and the kick on and 1, it's like da, right? So and this you'll hear this a lot, especially if you go back to the funky breaks and listen to the hip hop drummers or the hip hop drums, that kind of stuff. Like you hear a lot of syncopation, right? It's not just a backbeat. Like your backbeat, your basic Ringo Starr thing, boom, bop, boop, boop, bop, boop, bop, boop, boop, bop, right? But if you start breaking that up and syncopating it, that's where you get these great hip hop rhythms like boop, bop, boop, 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 boop, bop, 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 bop.
Hey, hold on, stop. Can I just also request that if anybody's going to give a drum exercise or a drum example, count it in. Because I'm going to assume that everybody watching this is as smart as I am, which is not very. So if you could like kind of 2, 3, 4, or if you're a dancer, Ivan, 5, 6, 7, 8. Jazz hands, jazz hands.
Boom, boom, bop, boom, 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 bop, boom, boom, bop, boom, 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 bop, boom, boom.
Okay. So that's really nice. I like that a lot. It was interesting. On a personal note, if I may, I find doing 1/3s, and we go like this: 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I find that really hard. I find it really hard and really boring, and I can't do it. And it's interesting, whenever I've looked at bands, like I pulled in and had a look at bands, even like good EDM mixes, when they do that, the 3's not on the 3 isn't quantized. The 3 on the kick is just off. Usually forward a bit, sometimes back a bit, but it's just off. And the reason I'm asking this is I was at a goth club on Wednesday night with a whole bunch of young people. Fantastic that there's a whole bunch of young people. And I was standing next to the speaker with my earplugs in because I'm responsible, listening to how so many tracks, the bass and the kick do not work. But it's really interesting, the beats and what people dance to. It was really interesting, which is why I'm asking this. Razzie, the floor is yours.
Totally forgot where I was going. I was enthralled with what you were saying about the speakers and envisioning standing in a club 20 years ago, last time I was inside a building with the bass actually pumping. Probably something about backbeats. I write a lot of songs with the snare on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and the kick drum on all 4s, and certainly on the 1 and 3. So I'm guilty of that, but I find it easy. I think Carl, you and I tend to have a lot of different like polar opposites in that stuff, where it's like the easiest thing for me to slip into is a backbeat rock drum pattern sometimes.
I'm guilty as well.
I mean, it's rock and roll. It's the sound of
fucking
rock and roll.
Effective.
Say again?
It's fucking effective. The reason that the backbeat has dominated rock and roll is because it's
since dance hall English, not a band like stage bands in the late 40s, I guess, sometime around there, where it was snare drums on the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of stuff. No syncopation.
Okay, thanks. This is really fantastic. It's So something I like to do is have our breakbeat like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, I'm going to be clicking the kick drum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1 and 2 and fuck. You know what I mean? It's on the 1 and the 2 and. So it's 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Or I put it on the 3 and, which is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
You can get a lot of
hold
mileage.
on, Adam. Can I keep going on my rant? Thanks.
Thought you were done.
And what I like to do is have the I like having that funk thing going on, so that it's what I go back to, or I might even start on that. So you know when you're in the third verse and it's like, whoa, things are spooky and broken down now. That's a great place to pull out that funk beat. So it comes off the 4 on the floor and it goes on to the 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I'm starting to hate the rules that I make. So I don't know what that rule. I'm going to call it a funk or a Manchester or something like that. But it's a nice thing to throw in the song where the song is 4 on the floor, because for me 4 on the floor breaks down around about 146 or so. It just goes, or you have to drastically change. The kick's got to become really short. And if it's slower, it just seems to be this window of opportunity where the 4 on the floor, it's like life on Earth. It's like the, you know, I don't know where it is. I could pull out random numbers. I don't know, 120 to 140-ish. I don't want to get into that fucking debate, but it's just really interesting that, you know, making a slower song really chugga-wugga isn't interesting. It's very difficult to do that for me anyway. Chugga-wugga is a technical term, and if you don't know it, then you don't know anything. And Anthony, hello. Juan, I really want to hear what you have to say on this.
I kind of jumped in a little late, so I forgot where I didn't hear the starting point.
Kick drums, go.
Okay. I am guilty of just 4 on the floor the whole way through, and while I'm producing, I find the rhythms in whatever the sounds are that are coming in, and you start finding a groove there. Then I'll start building the drums to complement that, and then eventually a groove shows up. Talking about old breaks, actually, Rozzy and I, it's funny, when Rozzy and I first met, that was one of the first conversations we had, was talking about kind of the beauty of these old school breaks that were sampled and still today used.
Name some.
Oh, geez, the almond break, the scorpion one, you know, like all those. And then fast forwarding to just, I think 2 nights ago, we were talking about just this, you know, where it's, you know, grace notes and off time beats and all that. Specifically for me, I'm a huge fan of drum and bass, and drum and bass, like hip hop, borrowed immensely from these breaks. In this case, speeding them up, chopping them up, you know, changing up the rhythms of them. And more modern drum and bass is doing some really interesting things with their drums, where they're simplifying them almost to the point that they can sound boring out of context, but they're on a production level, they're tight. But the rhythms they're coming up with are, you know, there's almost like these really broken beat kind of rhythms that you're hearing. But when they're tied together with the bass line and the rhythm of the bass line, you just get this groove that you can bob your head to, but you don't know where you are in the measure. You don't know what's happening, but there's this energy. So I think there's a lot to be said about breaking from, you know, the 4/4 and just depending on that, but at the same time, not worrying about the drums doing the job of the groove all the time. You know, letting some of your sounds and maybe unorthodox percussive elements also bringing in that groove. I think I'm going to stop there, because after that I'm going to blant off. But that's kind of my thought on what you guys are saying so far.
Okay, I love it. Get ready to go off, because I want to hear everybody except Adam. I don't want to hear from Adam. Hey, so Adam, just to get you up to speed, Amen is this drum beat. And it's this really cool drum beat that a lot of people use. I actually got this really excellent sample pack by this guy named DJ Adam Bomb, and I bought it off Bandcamp. And what you should do is, if you can, throw that into the chat, and I'll actually put that online. And it's actually, and Adam, I will thank you for that. That's it, good man. This is a really, really good sample pack. It's on, and I want to make a note here. This is on Bandcamp. Adam did it. And it's bloody great. I use it a lot. Adam, the floor is yours. Go.
Yeah, no, thank you. Actually, as you know, I'm a huge drum and bass fan, and I'm totally with you on that. Like, I feel like it's a very innovative. Like, one of the things that is so great about drum and bass is the continual reinterpretation of the classic loops, right? And creating new rhythms and polyrhythms from them, which is why I literally had that link at hand here, because I was going to say, hey, if you're into that kind of stuff, check this out. So thank you, Carl. What I did with that is I took the classic breaks and I did extended, looping them and quantizing and cleaning it up so that it's all very nice.
But I will say you didn't quantize them too much.
No,
and I'm really grateful, because there's areas where the snares are still a little behind. It's got the funk, and I'm really glad you did it really well. Sorry.
It was really about getting it so that the one beats will line up. So if you take the beats from any of the beat ranges, like say you're use the 105s or whatever, you can pretty much just every 4 bars or whatever flip to the other loop, and it'll still be perfectly in time. And that's why I did that. Of course, you can change it, cut it, whatever you do with it. That's the point, is that it's a tool. But yeah, those funky breaks, those classic breaks, they give us a great a wealth of patterns to choose from. I was thinking, like, when the conversation first started, before, like when I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to get on this one. You were talking about the disco beats, that 4 on the floor disco beat. So the important thing about the disco beat is that off time hi-hat, the hi-hat's on the end. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on the hi-hat. And that's what gives the disco beat its pump, if that makes sense. And I know you were going to talk about side chaining later, so I don't want to like jump off into side chaining from the word pump, but
all right, thank you so much. I just want to really quickly, before I throw it to Razzie, getting a drum loop, throwing it into your project, expanding it out, and looking at where those hi-hats are sitting, and the kicks and the snare, and take it the amen break. And actually, there's crowdfunding campaigns and stuff where you can pay the guy that did the amen break and the funky drumming. You can pay those guys, pay them, throw them money. Those guys, they damn well deserve it. But my point is that look at the grooves that they are doing. Look at where they're on the beat and off the beat. It's, that whole groove quantizing we are now getting into a galaxy of funk. And the galaxy of funk is a good place to be. Luckily, I know a guy with a spaceship. Rezi, what you got?
You actually just jumped right onto what I was thinking. And it was more of a question. Rather than talking about how to restructure where you're placing them on the grid, your kick drums, in this away from 4 on the floor discussion. Since hip hop has been broached and we're into that realm of human played break beats, what is a proper line of inquiry to find out like how this so-called broken beats and drunken beats and like J Dilla stuff, how that's constructed? I've watched a few things. I'm aware of how that works, but to my ear, I fucking hate that. And then I just don't inspect it, but I know down in my heart that I really like it and I'm just being a snob. So, does anybody have a path toward like kind of getting my head around, specifically? I think I've made it clear what I'm getting at without having the exact terms correct.
Adam, go.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask you for just a little more clarification, Razi, because J Dilla is not an artist whose work I'm super familiar with, being an old school cat myself. What is the rhythmic? Like, can you count?
I could not convey it because it's outside the realm of where I've gotten any mastery. But it's moving stuff off the grid so far as to almost push it toward the next beat division into a triplet feel, but it's not quite. It's maybe a realm of putting your kick snare relationship into the gray area. But I'm talking out of my pay grade. It's like this is the wrong class. So
in scratch DJing, like turntablism, there's a style that we call drunken monkey. And the reason that we call it drunken monkey is that it's very like, you know, like the idea of it is you do something, you do these slow drag ass patterns, and then you do something really quick and very tight, and then so it's using the it's using fast and slow together to create a more interesting overall patterns. So you know what I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to mute and I'm going to go and find like whatever Jay Dilla's most popular song is and see if I can hear what you're thinking, because I think I know what you mean, where it's got a little bit of more like a shuffle to it.
There's swing, there's shuffle, there's triplet feel off the stuff. There's a lot of things. I think I've seen it demonstrated by Questlove, actually, which is pretty mainstream and just proving how super underground I am that I wouldn't have been aware of.
But yeah, I want to try to find a specific example of that, and then I think I can probably be more helpful. So
awesome. If anybody else wants to jump in, they're welcome, and thank you, Adam. I would like to shoot my mouth off a little bit at this point. Oh, talking about shooting my mouth off, here's Alex. No, Juan, floor's yours.
So I luckily was exposed a lot to the hip hop culture. I used to break dance. I used to be had friends that were graffiti artists, turntablism, and all that. I can't speak to the musical approach to some of the beats you're talking about, Rozzy, but Jay Dilla, apparently the revered album is Donuts. I've spent time with it, but not enough to really understand it. The guy is incredible with chopping beats and making beats in general. I don't know enough to even be an authority on this, but to my understanding, a lot of it is exactly that, chopping up these beats and finding rhythms that are in there that wouldn't be natural. Like, it doesn't feel natural, but it has this fucking groove that it's just like, oh shit, it feels off time. It feels, but again, like I was talking about before, drum and bass, you're just bobbing your head to it. And what's interesting is that when you listen to that, I'm sure we've all seen it, where you hear a sample of an old break where the hi-hat is hitting so hard because of the way it's recorded, processed, and all that. It could be a damn snare, but it's still being used as a hi-hat. So it's almost like when you're inversing the behavioral patterns of what a drum kick should be doing versus a snare versus a hi-hat, it also kind of provokes these interesting rhythms. So going back to the 1 and 2 and, or these ghosts and grace notes before that are slightly delayed. Again, I'm just kind of enjoying the conversation, throwing in there without knowing exactly what I'm talking about. From what I've seen, it's a lot of just take this fill, put it in front of the kick, and the 1 is now the fill, and the snare lands off. But so now it's like if the beat, it almost feels like the beat is off by 1 beat, but the whole song is still on the first beat. And you get that interesting feel. So it's very much experimental that way. And I think what gives it, I think I'm repeating what I said before, but what really gives it its soul is that the music is playing one way and the drums are playing a different way with it. And then you just get this groove that it's like, holy shit, like you couldn't have written that intentionally unless you've learned that over time from doing it. But through experimentation, I know I constantly bring experimentation up, but just that whole chopping pieces up and throw it into the bowl, salad bowl, mixing it up and seeing what comes out. But it's almost like not worrying about the rules and just looking for that feel, finding that groove.
That's brilliant, man. Thank you so much. Alex, it's so good to see you. And also Jack Red and Violet, I think, was on there. Ha 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 ha. I'm sorry I missed you. Alex, what you got?
So I didn't know that it was 1 hour early for me.
I'm sorry, that was my bad.
No problem, no problem. I think if you want to really understand this kind of sloppy playing, you should either get an MPC style drum machine or emulate that workflow in your DAW, which is totally possible. I think my first drum machine was the MPC 1000, and I think the best thing about that particular piece of gear is that you don't see what you put in. You have to just play it in. If it's in time, great. If not, you either redo it or quantize it. and I usually redid it back in the day. And I think this kind of workflow really teaches you much about groove and so on. I think, like usually what I played into those in this machine was much more groovy than what I do on my Octatrack, even though it's a newer piece of gear, because you just have to listen. Because you by default you don't see your notes, your MIDI triggers. You just have to listen, and if it's good, then it's good. If not, you have to redo it or quantize it. So I think just using this type of workflow will teach you how to do these kinds of beats.
I love it. Thank you so much. Adam.
Unmute. There we go. So I am completely agreeing with Alex actually, because I just listened to a chunk of Donuts by Jay Dilla there, and I kind of get I think I have an idea of what they're doing there. It's actually not too far off from what Rick Rubin was doing with layering samples with an MPC. With the samples on the MPC, so like sort of fattening up the beat. But what I'm really hearing is something that I think comes more from turntablism and beat juggling, because what turntablists will do, if you watch like the DMC kind of stuff, right, you'll see them taking the records and like, you know, they'll have a beat going, but then they recreate a beat on the records using the kicks and the snares and the hi-hat patterns, and you have so you can do the pullbacks things to get the reverse kicks and that kind of stuff, right, kind of kicks and that sort of thing. I'm also hearing kind of a lot of flamming in the Donuts tune, like you know when the beats are just slightly off, like flam, right, which fattens out that kick sound a lot. It's got like this almost doubled kick, but it's so close. It's like, you know, it's like a flam, and I hear the use of that. So like between those like sort of flamming tricks and the reversing beats trick, it really sounds like a beat juggle to me. And yeah, so DJ turntablists get very, very creative with the beat juggling and very jazzy and very funky with it. And a lot of times it's putting the snare where you expect a kick drum to be. Like, you know, you were talking before about the 3 and beat kind of thing. It's like they'll put the snare on the and instead, you know, so it has this like shorter chopped up feel. Like the hard beat comes too soon, so it's like almost shocking when you hear it, but it's staying on rhythm, like what Mark was saying and what Juan was saying about it staying in, like because of the music around it or the bass line around it, it's like that bass line is really holding the time through the parts where the beats themselves are maybe a little more ambiguous. But I think what Jay Dilla is doing is essentially like advanced Rick Rubin, you know, combining the beat loops with the MPC or drum machine, and also the turntablism techniques, you know, the beat juggling and backwards beats kind of stuff.
That's amazing, man. Thank you.
It really is neat stuff. You know, I'm gonna have to do a bunch of listening to Jay Dilla because I started listening to Donuts. I'm like, this is fucking beast, man. This is great. You know, being a bit more old school, like I'm like, I know my hip hop up until about 2000, but into the, you know, mid 90s and stuff when I was DJing it a lot for college parties, but yeah, the production in that's pretty intense, and I see what you mean, Rozzy. So one of the things that I was thinking to mention earlier is that thing about moving the snare to a place that's unexpected in a rhythm. The quickest example I can give, one of my own, a song called "A Night Alone." And it starts off kind of like this chugging, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then it changes to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and goes back. So the where you expect it to be, it changes, but then it resolves. And I think this is kind of the important thing when we're talking about kick drums and syncopated patterns and stuff, is that that go back to that idea that funk lives in the one. Like if it resolves on the one beat, it's not gonna, how do you say this? Well, it's going to resolve. As long as you can get pretty wild with your beat pattern, but if you lose where that one beat is that starts your measures, every bar doesn't have to be on the one, but the first one does. And
sure.
Then you get that sense of resolution.
Thank you. All right. I want to bring up three things. Stevie Wonder, Do I Do? That track is just so terrifyingly amazing because of what the kick and the bass are doing. 2, 3, 4, and ba 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 ba, and da 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 da, and it doesn't hit that one. It's just before the one. I think it's a 16th before the one. It's same with Thriller. The main thing with Thriller is it's just the 16th before 2, 3, 4, da da 2. It's just in there. And what's interesting about Thriller, the greatest fucking riff ever, is that's an LM1. That's a Linn drum. Straight hard 16 quantized, just going ba cha 1, 2, 3, like straight up. Sorry, I'm complaining. 2 thoughts. 1, I have a theory that the 3 is it just seems to me to get in the way. And one thing I like to do is move it just that way or just that way, either a 16th or an 8th, either way. And you start getting some really interesting grooves when you do that. Because it can be like 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and instead of it being 1, 2, 3, 4, I just move the 8, the number 3, the number 3 beat, half a beat late, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and or I will attempt to move it a 16th.
Like,
forgive me for fucking this up. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That when you start doing that, you really, really start like making people move, like getting them to jolt. I'm trying to bring it back to the kick a bit here. A great example as well is I think it's the latest Prodigy album, where every single song has a different kick groove. And like it used to be pretty much kind of Manchestery stuff. There's this one beat that's mad, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it pulls the 4 a 16th early. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it does this to you. It's so good. And this is why I want to talk about what the kick drum does to your brain, and your body and your legs. And if you want to do something really fun, is look at your tempo and push that when you're knocking a kick drum off, or you might have a kick drum just before the beat. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, to 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a 16th going in at the end of the bar. You quantize that 16th, you start pushing it towards the triplet, and you start getting some fantastic beats, some really, really lovely things. So you might want to try this. I have a theory, me myself, if a song isn't working or it sounds clattery or pooey, move the 3. Either take the kick off the 3 or move it a 16th or an 8th either side. Just feel it out and start groove quantizing. It could be a triplet 8th or a triplet 16th, depending on where you're going. It's a thought, and I'm throwing it out there. Alex, I want to hear your thoughts.
So first of all, since we are talking MPC, I want to give a shout out to Roger Lynn. I mean, creative projects are usually, or like industrial projects are usually not just one person, but his ideas obviously were very influential. And also, I think if you want to get this kind of groove with an MPC, you also have to chop a lot, because if you chop something that's not like totally quantized, the sample itself will have a certain groove to it.
Okay, Alex,
that will-
if you want to go on a rant about chopping up samples, do it now, because I want to hear about this. This is good. Keep going.
I do it far too little. How do I say it? I don't do it far enough. But if you do it, the starting point will usually not be directly on the beginning of the sample, so it will begin either a bit before, usually, or a bit later, and that will give you a certain groove that suggests also drum groove. And I don't know how well it works if you're using like splice samples, because I suspect many of them are like quantized, but if you sample records, you will get a groove. And the third thing, something I usually did with grooves that I play in, is certain aspects of the groove will be quantized, like either the kick drum or the snare drum, and the rest will be like free floating, free timing. However, I managed to put it in, and I feel this combination will lead to usually quite good results.
I'm sorry, Adam. I know you're biting at the chomp for this. Just really quickly, Alex, you've brought up something so wonderful, because it's like, when you look at those hi-hats and you cut them up, the hi-hat is just behind, so the cut point's there, but the hi-hat's here, and there's like nanoseconds. So if you take them and you cut them without cutting to the beginning of the hi-hat, but you leave that tiny bit of space in there, that groove space, isn't it empty? Interesting how groove is empty space. And you then move that around, or the snare around, or the kick around, you are honoring the groove. That's fantastic. I love that. Adam, what do you got?
Oh boy, this is the perfect day for me, just so you know. I'm loving every second of this. The rhythm that you were talking about a few minutes ago, Carl, the dot 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 dot. I used a rhythm like that when I did your Hardcore Pong remix, buddy.
Yes, you did.
I also used the classic think break in that. Can you tell?
No, tell me what
I
is
did it. I did it at 130 beats per minute. That's why.
Tell me, what is the think break? Show us.
The beginning of it takes two. The woo yeah part.
No. I should. Okay, yeah.
That's the think break. The next thing I wanted to jump onto there, what Alex was just saying, and what you were just saying about the sample length.
Yeah.
All right. So that's something I was thinking about when I was listening to the Jay Dilla thing. Is like, if you want to kind of break up how your kick drums sound and your four on the floor, make some of them longer and some of them shorter. Like like the 909, right, is like the 909 bass kick is like classically like boom, right? It's a long tone, right? But then you have like the like the 808 very tight, like doof, 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 like New Order's Blue Monday.
Yeah.
Right. And by using different sample lengths, it creates more texture in the rhythm. So like doom dot dot doom dot dot doom 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 dot. The trick with the 909s is always not to let them layer over too much, to give them space. So you have to like chop. If you've got two of them next to each other, you have to chop one so it doesn't ring into the other. Doom,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that sample length thing can also create interesting textures. How do I say this? So like if the value of the note is a quarter, but the sample length cuts off a piece of that, and then you put it next to the other sample but butt it right up against it, now it's not on that quarter anymore.
That's amazing. Keep going.
Well, it's a great way to get some extra texture into, like, some humanization into your rhythms too. And there are a lot of tools that can help put more humanization in there. I mean, in Reason, we have the the Groove computer, and it allows you to set parameters for like offset and swing and that kind of stuff. And so to unstiffen your beats a little bit, it's randomized, but you set the parameters within which it randomizes, right? So you can get a little more humanization, because human drummers are never perfect. Not even Stevie Wonder. But Stevie Wonder would really use that to his advantage, because he was the kind of cat that would he'd speed it up just a little bit and then slow it down a little bit, like put the groove, like put the tension into it. Here's another thing. What you were saying earlier, Carl, about how sometimes you felt like the 3-beat was a little late and sometimes it was a little before. I use this trick a lot to create pressure. If you slide the beat just a little before, it sounds like it's coming faster at you, and if you slide it a little bit behind, it sounds more relaxed. So even with 2 tracks of the same tempo, two beats of the same tempo, what's around it can very much change how the drums feel. Like if the bass line is right on top of it, it feels one way. If it's a little ahead, it feels another way. If it's a little behind, it feels another way. And that's a lot of what your dancers are going to feel when you actually put it onto the dance floor. It's not just the rhythm itself, but the relationship of the rhythm instruments as well. The other nice thing, and now again, even with just your 4 on the floor, like house disco beat, so most of this interesting stuff that happens in house music is actually the percussion that happens on top of that. So you have much more syncopated tribal beat sort of stuff, more based on hand drumming patterns and that kind of thing too.
Thank you.
I see other hands, so I'm going to shut up.
If anybody has mirrored sunglasses, please put them on. I'm going to talk about something in a moment that requires mirrored sunglasses. A fun thing to do is if you've got a kick drum that's coming in a 16th early or something, or a fill flammy kick drum, just cut off the tip of it. Like just a couple of waves in, and use that, because it's got a different feel to it. It just has this different, not full bang, but it's just kind of like partially muted. So the reason I'm making a request on mirrored sunglasses is I was at a goth club on Wednesday night, and of course they played Sisters of Mercy, and whenever you talk about, thank you, Alex, whenever you talk about Sisters of Mercy, you have to have mirrored sunglasses. In fact, I think it needs to become a law that if they play Sisters, sunglasses have to go on. I don't know why, but it just should be a law. And everybody should have a mullet. And if they don't have a mullet, then they're out. And I was listening to Doktor Avalanche. Oh, Mark, look at you. Banging away. Doktor Avalanche, of course, is Sisters of Mercy's drum machine, which is a Korg Triple D1. And they went with the Korg Triple D1 because everybody else was using SP12s or SP1200s at that stage. And the Triple D1 sounded different. And it became their sound. Anyway. And I was listening to how that was bump, 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 bump. It was this relentless kick. And I was listening to it some closer, and I noticed that I think that they had another sub kick under it. Bum, 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 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So it's also almost as if that top machine gun kick, because we all love our top machine gun kicks. Ivan, you look like a writer. I asked specifically for Sisters of Mercy, and you come at me looking like Hunter S. Thompson. Sorry. I I think they put a high pass filter on that, like ever so slightly on that kick. And then there was another one under it accentuating it. And that's another thing that I find really fascinating is how do they deal with, you know, when you got that classic machine gun kick drum going on, how do you get it not absolutely cluttering your subs? And then that's a part B question, which is if you do you prefer the bass behind or in front? That sounded so sexual. Alex, I see your hands.
Okay, 3 things. First of all, drummers can be perfect, but they will never be on grid. Second, if your drum machine or sampler has a sample start parameter that can be modulated, you can use samples that have a bit of silence in front, and then use this sample start parameter to slightly modulate during the groove how far behind it is. This can have a really nice effect, like suddenly everything shifting and you feel it. Also something similar, and I think that is more common, is you can modulate the decay parameter of your drums. So if it's long decay, you have like a looser feel, and then you can tighten it up by just shortening it, and that can give it some oomph.
Thank you. And before we throw to Ivan S. Thompson, I just want to I want to throw in there that I hear people doing that, and they also add pitch. They add a pitch bend to the drum, so it goes boom, and it really bounces, man. Ivan, what you got?
We were 6 miles out of Chicago when the 808s kicked in. I do, you know, to make the kick and the bass fit together, I will always just, you know, compress inside chain, you know, to make it work. And then, you know, the joy of Ableton is the groove pool. You know, because you can throw a groove onto your drum track, and most of that will get taken care of then for you. Also, you can switch between different grooves across the song just by using automation to change which one's going in. You know, Ableton's good at that, or at least decent. I almost never use drum samples. Like all my drums, pretty much all of my drums, in fact, it's always coming from Roland Cloud, and it's you know, the Zencore, almost always Zencore drums that I use for everything, because, you know, again, like I just need to get like a Roland tattoo and wear it proudly.
Good on you, man. Hey, can I ask you, we were 6 miles outside of, is it outside of Las Vegas or outside Las Vegas? It's out of, isn't it?
Yeah, I think out of.
I'm actually changing that to, we were 6 miles outside of Chicago when the 909s kicked in, because I got a 909 kick drum. Ivan, you won,
also,
you won the internet today. Well done.
On beat patterns, and in industrial music, go listen to Cracker by Ogre, because that is 3/4. That's a waltz. But it's at 139 BPM, so it's not just a waltz. I mean, it's Viennese speed. And good news, it's 3.5 minutes. So you'll be sweating by the time you get done Viennesing to that, but you will not fall over dead. It's like Blue Danube is like 126 BPMs usually, but Blue Danube is 12-minute song. Yeah, with like tempo changes going on and stuff.
And the evolution of humankind as satellites fly around the Earth.
Yeah, and like that will wear you right out.
Excellent. Thank you, Ivan.
Apparently back in the late 19th century when that stuff was really popular, they were also using a lot of cocaine.
And that's why they call it Dirty Dancing. Sorry, that didn't work. Thank you. Adam, help me.
So a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about layering, about how you're like, oh, it's got this sub kick underneath it. I layer all my, like, every kick I've ever done is layered because you want to have the sub kick, you want to have the part that gets you in the chest, and then you want to have that sort of overtone so that it stays in. So otherwise when you're listening to it on
there?
small
Like, where's
speakers,
the
you won't
sub,
really hear
where's
it.
the chest, where's the overtone, if I can ask?
The sub is your, like, basically,
Where?
I'm gonna say
Number?
under 90.
How much?
Under 90 hertz.
Under 90.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the punch in your chest is gonna be somewhere in the upper 100s to lower 200s, and then the beater sound. So, like, when you actually kick a kick drum, you get kind of a combination of sounds, because you have the sound of the beater itself hitting the head, the sound of the head vibrating, and then the sound of the shell reverberating. And all of those happen in those different frequency ranges. So you get the beater sound, and then you get the head sound, which is the buff, buff, buff. And then you get the reverberation sound, which is oomph, oomph, oomph.
That's fucking great, man. I love this. And what's great about that is also, if you're
Was a
running
drummer first?
Yeah, if you're running the sub through a with your sub bass, you can compress / sidechain those two things together, and then the kick drum is going through with the main bass, and you can compress and sidechain them together. Like, I love that. That's great.
Usually, I will cut off the bottom of the bass instrument, like the bass synth or bass guitar or whatever you want.
Where?
I
What
cut
number?
off the
Give me a
bottom
number.
of that so that the kick stays clean.
High pass.
Because,
what number?
High pass, whatever number gets it over here. So, like, 60, 70, 80 hertz. So that it blends a little bit. You don't want to cut it off entirely. You want it to roll into it and blend a little bit with the kick, with the sub kick. But from a DJ perspective and a nightclub perspective kind of thing, like, the super clean sub kicks sound great, and then you have the bass line is actually just a little above that, so that it retains that oomph from the percussion itself. So I tend not to combine a sub bass instrument with a sub bass kick. It's kind of one or the other. I don't want those frequencies to get muddy. So usually, if I've got a bass line over something, it is over the sub and under that head sound I was talking about.
Right.
Like, it goes in between those layers. So somewhere in the 80 hertz to, well, upwards, but, like, as long as it doesn't get muddy. But yeah, I tend to cut off the bottom of all the instruments with the high pass. Again, you want to roll it off nice so that it doesn't sound stiff. I don't know, is that the word I'm looking for?
Clinical. Yeah.
it has to root into the layer below it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sort of blend in there.
Yeah, a little, like, in what I would call it smudging if you're using, like, pencils or something, smudging. So it's not like just a sharp delineation. You want to smudge it a little bit.
Okay. I love it.
But yeah, definitely, like, the layering is a big deal, and the same thing with snares. Like, I generally, for all of my snares, there's usually 2 or 3 snares in there, and one of them might be an effect snare that goes clank, which is, I guess like a good Sisters of Mercy trick, right, is to get a clanking snare. Clank, clank, like bang your pipe, layer that with your snare.
I love it.
But yeah, usually I'll have a bottom snare because you want the what I would call the beefiness of the snare. which again, you know, it's kind of you know, kind of thinking about what is a snare drum. You have the sound of the stick on the head, you have the rattling of the snares themselves, and you have the reverberation of the drum. So a bigger, broader drum is going to have more bottom end fatness, whereas like a piccolo is all like tick tick tick, right? A piccolo snare, you know, piccolo snare. So like where there's almost no reverberation and the sound is almost entirely the batter head and the snares. So usually what I'll do is I'll layer, because if I want like a real good crushing snare, right, it's got to have that bigger. So it's not even what frequencies, but the width of the frequencies, the width of the frequency range you're using. But like, yeah, it's like using more of that low frequency range in a snare layer is going to give you more of that fatness. Using less of it is going to give you more tightness, and then if you combine the two, you get a great deal of control over how your snare drum itself feels. And one of the things, again, I was a drummer first, so dynamics matter to me. Like, you know, like hitting a snare drum lightly and fucking hammering it sound really different. So to get sort of grace notes and stuff, again, like breaking from the 4/4 and giving it some syncopation, to give it grace notes and little rolls and stuff, you don't want to use the big fat bottom snare that you're using for the heavy. You just want that top end kind of sound, you know?
I love it, man.
So layering, I think, is super important in texturing your drums and making it, like, even making a real basic 4/4 pattern more interesting, by giving some variation in the attack on the you know, the intensity of the hit. I'm trying to think of what the actual word is for it now. I'm on drugs.
The whack. The bang.
Yeah. But like how hard it hits matters. The velocity, that's what I'm looking for. Velocity. So even with hi-hats, right? If you mess around with the velocity in your hi-hats, so all your hi-hats don't have the same velocity, it gives you more like, you know, instead of being it's, you know.
I love it. Adam, thank you. This has been amazing. I really appreciated that. Raz, blow my mind.
I don't know. You all have so much to say that I lose complete track of where I put a pin in what thought at what point in the conversation. But I don't know. Adam was saying on the anatomy of a kick drum and describing the components that go into it. And that's a fairly modern interpretation of a kick, which is awesome, when everything sounds like a cannon shot. Snare and kick both basically sound like the same kind of vibe. They hit you. But I was listening to Motley Crue's first album just a minute ago yesterday, and it's a whole different thing. I mean, the kick drum is just an instrument in the drum kit ensemble, and it's like maybe between 90 to 100 and 200, and then there's a slight 5K component to it that you can sort of perceive, but it's just this little thump that exists within the mix, and it definitely doesn't have that constructed, which I'm saying metal albums after that and hard rock albums were a sample of a kick drum processed with compression and envelope shaping and you know, a beater pad and a plastic beater, so that there's a smack component to the top of it, and then a compressed room component, so the explosive air around it also is included in the rush of the kick strike. I mean, this is a very different thing that we've arrived at, and we are talking about, I mean, I would imagine that none of us have finished a song without layers to the way we build our drums and basses and you know, the stuff that's got to carry a lot of weight. But I think I'm going to try making a small kick drum in a song sometime. I don't know if I'm going to manage to do it with single layer in one component. That's the other thing that I wanted to add on to that was, in the world of velocity layers not existing prior to that, where we just had a one-shot sample or several samples stacked, I was getting a lot of mileage, Adam alluded to this, out of slight pitch modulation by velocity. So the harder you play it, you get a little bit of a raise in pitch. So, but also finding groove in, and I think Carl, you mentioned it, and the decay component of one of the layers, maybe your 808, your most pure tone. So you've got a so your release, when you let go, if you're programming it in on, say, a MPC style pad, you can hold it and get a little bit of tone, a little bit of sustain out of that, and move some air in that, and really, there's a lot of something you can't really do with a natural kick drum. There's different hand drums and frame drums that you certainly could do that with, but it's a fun technique that I found on there. And I think, lastly, where to put the bass musical components frequency-wise with the kick. For some reason, I started, or time-wise, I started zooming in once we could zoom in on waveforms. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but I look exactly where the zero crossing is on the first wavefront, and I just trim to that so I know where the thing's going to strike, and then I use quantization or groove to move it off that. So,
okay, thank you so much. You brought up a really interesting point about like the rock albums were just, the kicks are not like, I thank you, Juan. Destroy my brain.
So I don't know if we veered off too far off, but and I think Rozzy just brought it back. You had asked about or brought up the topic of having, the kick and the bass sitting in a certain space. I'm not sure if that was musically or production wise, which obviously go hand in hand. But for like the last maybe 2 years, I think I've been specifically focusing on that from a production standpoint, a mixing standpoint, is how to, where should your kick sit and where should your bass sit, and, should it be above or below? What I'm finding, and this is just kind of share my findings and what's been successful and see what everyone else's thoughts are, is there's a couple ways to approach it. And I think it always depends on your composition and what the song's intent is. If you have a hard 4 on the floor industrial track where the kick is just bouncing, it's just smashing, and all the low end and sub is in the kick, well, then clearly you're not going to have necessarily a melodic bass line with that, because it's just not really going to work. You have so much space being consumed by the kick. As where if the kick is supposed to serve as a punchy or a bumpy kind of element in the rhythm, where the bass is being handled elsewhere, there's a different approach there. So what I'm finding is, to talk frequencies, Adam brought this up or touched on this. I've been writing a lot in, if it's going to be sub-bass focused, where the bass plays a major part in the song, not necessarily of the kick, but just as an instrument, usually on F and G, because I find that at the lower octaves of F and G, you start hitting, and I'm looking at a chart here, so I don't know this by off the top of my head, but maybe around the 40s and a little higher, like the 80s, 90s, around there, which is around where the kick consumes, but that's also where I'm finding bass is more audible and kind of, you can feel it. So what I end up doing is taking the kick and, as a starting point, chop any sub of the kick, which would probably be about below 90. You just cut that off. So that way you don't have a bump of the kick, but you still have like the punch and the transient of the kick coming through, and let the bass sit there. Once you find a good balance with that, now you introduce maybe sidechaining compression, multi-band compression on it just to target the subs, or Ableton has something called an envelope follower, which will follow the kick, and you can assign that to a gain knob on a certain frequency on an EQ on the sub. So it's only ducking the frequency the kick comes in. To take this even further back, to talk about the anatomy of the kick, you look at a kick, you just take an 808, you have the transient, you have kind of a pitch sweep that goes down, that starts off really high down into whatever sub frequency it's going to hit. So if you zoom in, that's the makeup of it. So sometimes if you were to take a sine wave, just a straight sine wave at, I don't know, let's say at an F, sub sine wave, and you put an 808 above it, keep it at decent volume, you'll just see it bump. If it's all on the same frequency, you'll see it bump. So what I've been I'm trying to explain this while I'm thinking about it, is if you were to sidechain that, you just get a steady curve, let's say, like nothing really comes up in volume because nothing's stacking. So, and that goes back to sidechaining. So with your kick, if you can do that, where you just kind of notch the sub, wherever the sub is going to be, and the sub is a different element, and let the kick punch through the mix. Now you can use the sub instrument, whatever it is, if it's multiple instruments playing sub frequencies, with different modulations and texture, or just one sine wave, that can now fill in the bump of your kick while still playing a bass line, and you have complete control of the sub while the kick is doing what it's supposed to do, which is just give you that punch every so often in the percussion.
Fucking brilliant. I love it. Thank you. Alex?
I just wanted to say the obvious. One thing that Res already mentioned was that one way to add dynamics to your drums is to alter the pitch, or if you're synthesizing them, the pitch envelope is also an option. And also one popular thing is altering the filter. Like you have a filter, and if you have a high velocity note, the filter goes off, and it closes if it's low velocity. Also, if you put a distortion behind your drum voice, then it will add more overtones if it's louder, because the way distortion works. And yeah, I also wanted to shout out Carl 14 years ago, who did Blipword on Hell drums, which I think it was really has many interesting techniques.
Thank you. Hey, can I pick up on something you said? It's really common to put velocity to the filter of a low pass filter. So the harder you hit it, the more gag, the more it opens out. So a thought is that if you did a similar thing but put it to a high pass, so the harder you hit it or the softer you hit it, maybe, it's sucking bass out. So therefore, every time it lines up with the kick drum, it's going to suck bass out of it. So the kick drum can just do its thing. A thought. Mark, destroy me with your magic.
I have no magic to destroy with, but my thing was more of a question, but it's more of a sound design question. I don't know if we wanted to move on from what we're currently at yet.
Let's see where we go.
Okay, so my question is anyone here familiar with the work of Zombie Girl?
Kind of.
Okay, I very rarely hear bass like Zombie Girl bass. How do I recreate that? Well, the kick drum, I mean, specifically the kick drum.
Okay, Adam, do you want to answer this or whatever? The floor is yours, Adam, so...
I'm going to give it a quick shot. So Sebastian Comore produces the Zombie Girl stuff. He's the, he compresses the fuck out of his drums. There's a great tool. It's from the Waves package, and it's called
R-Bass.
Is that no? It's not R-Bass. It's
Max Bass.
No, it's not X Bass. It's the one that actually kind of creates artificial sub.
Renaissance Bass.
Sorry.
Renaissance Bass is the plugin. It does. It'll divide it. You could have your fundamental and then an octave. And there's other tools. Ableton has a bass processor also that synthesizes.
Yeah.
And
basically what it does is it creates the artificial frequency, the artificial harmonic frequencies for lower than human hearing fundamentals. So that's a very cool thing to use. I agree. Zombie Girl, well, pretty much anything that Sebastian produces just sounds amazing in the club PAs. It's why we play his stuff so much, is that it just sounds that good. And a lot of that sound design is, I mean, really what makes his stuff work well is that everything is well separated and very, very clean. The compression is enough to give it the fatness and the volume without flattening it. But then having these other tools, why can't I think of the name of this particular tool? It's not Renaissance Bass. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the chat over here. I apologize. But it's a Waves plugin, and it's one of the ones that you can get as a standalone too. You don't have to have the whole big thing. It's like literally the first Waves plugin I ever bought, and I put in the chat over here. Sorry?
Maxi Bass.
Max Bass, that's it. That's the one.
That?
Oh, I thought he said X Bass.
No.
I was like, sorry,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
just me not hearing well over the Zoom. But yes, Max Bass, that's the puppy. I use it on a lot of my stuff. I don't use it, by rote or anything. It depends, as always, as Juan was just saying, it depends on the track, right? It depends on what you're trying to do with the piece that you're trying to make. In the chat there, I threw up a track I have called Sour Diesel, and it's one of my few excursions into that particular type of sound. But I used Max Bass all over that. And that's one of the ones where I did a layering technique that's more similar to what Juan was saying. That said too, Juan, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, what you were talking about. So like in the drum and bass, you have a lot of crazy basses, like the Hoovers and the Reeses and stuff, right? A lot of those, the reason that they're so powerful is actually because they're not that low, and then you combine it with the sine bass lows, which are obviously very popular in trap and southern hip hop and a lot of other Miami bass, that kind of stuff, Miami. So that's a trick where you're basically what I was saying before about the shell of the drum. It's like you're replacing that sound with like a sine bass, because you get that really nice clean boom, that bell tone, yeah, and then of course you can mess with the pitching and the envelope of the whole thing. But I think to answer what Mark was asking about the Zombie Girl production is that he is using production techniques like that. He's using the production techniques that are, it's not how do I say this? It's not like the production techniques from the Chicago industrial scene. He's like really grabbed onto the EDM production techniques. Like post. What was it that V&V was so famous for using? The Virus, was that the synth that they? Yeah. So the post-Virus kind of sound. But yeah, so layers and good compression and really good separation, and that's how he gets that punch in the PA.
Thank you. I think industrial music needs to see stuff as BV, which is before Virus, and PV, which is post-Virus. Because it's really interesting how that synthesizer ruins so much stuff. What I want to say very quickly is I have my go-to for drums is the Mutant Brains hex inverter of the BD09. So it's like a hex inverter's very debauched version of a 909, and it's all analog and it's bloody beautiful. But what it does is it's got a sub oscillator, like someone was saying, and you can control that with the control voltage, and you can also control the length with the control voltage as well. And the really cool thing is you can it takes the sub, the kick, and then the sub, which both follow the same pitch contour. It then distorts them together. So when you throw that sub through distortion, it just goes ballistic. And it's an incredible way to get drums talking. Because I'm sure there's other things you can be doing, like in your DAW or something, you might have a really low a really low one that only comes in every now and then, and they both get bussed together and then distorted or warmthed or something. I don't know. Raz, save me.
We think alike. You're talking about the way that Max Bass and other bass enhancement processors work. The two key methods they use are the adding an oscillator that just gets triggered. So it's like here's a tone, I'm going to play it when you play your kick drum, lines it up, you can change the pitch, change the decay. And then the other thing is it actually, to get it to register on small speakers adds upper harmonics a lot, and they're phase coherent with the kick, so they sound like part of the same instrument. And I actually stopped using that a long time ago, but now that we're on the topic, I'm totally going to go explore that shit. And what I'm hearing, Mark, in a lot of the Zombie Girl tracks is just one of the many components, of course, adding to the things other people have mentioned and several that a quick listen isn't going to reveal. Solid down the middle mono kicks with a ton of that upper air. The attack is really short but really clicky, but they've also got that upper harmonics component in addition to relying on this fundamental. And I'm listening on shitty ass earbuds right now that have no bass representation whatsoever, and it still sounded solid. And then the bass instrument, the melodic bass, the fundamental tones are very wide. Super no phase coherence between the two channels. It may be just two takes of the same synth instrument. It may be just that there's a delay between them, Haas effect. It could be just chorusing with the moving delay. There's lots of ways to achieve that, but it's a super wide ass, bright ass, buzzy component to keep them separated a little bit, so the kick really has a presence that lives in the middle, and the bass, melodic bass lives on the fringes like that.
Wow. All right, man. Thank you so much, Resi. That was great. Alex.
I just wanted to quickly throw in, if you want a drum synthesizer that sounds a bit different and not 808 or 99-ish, this one is good. It's not fun to program, but it sounds good. It's very dynamic. It's digital, but yeah, if you can get a good price for this one, this is the first one that nobody wants because it doesn't have as many features, but if you get a good price for it, I can recommend it.
Excellent. And that's the Nord drum. Yes, look at that. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I see no more hands. Do we want to continue on this? We could go on for this for days, or we could save some of this up for next week. Do we want to change gears? Do we want to put a pin in this and say hasta la vista? I see Resi's hand.
This is optional for you, but if you could weigh in a little bit on your experience putting out a track this week, which I love.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your efforts and successes and weirdness, if anything happened, just to maybe wrap this up.
All right. So, I actually did, it was the one before this. I did a marquee promo with Spotify. I only did $200 because I was very concerned about its butter. There's that word, especially for you, Mark. By the way, you look fantastic in mirrored glasses. I was just thinking, dude, that's an album cover right there, Mark. You look killer. Hold on, I'm looking at my numbers right now. No, there was a slight bump. And that was actually Art Imitates War. I did the marquee, the Spotify marquee thing for. It's nowhere near worth doing, from what I can tell. So what I'm doing right now is I'm releasing a single for Angelspit every 5 weeks, and then an Ice Planet 9000 track every 5 weeks. But there's a 2.5 week thing between them. And the reason I'm doing that is I just want to keep stuff going. Specifically with Angelspit, I'm really interested in saying, here is a track that is insanely heavy. It's very, very, very heavy. Like the new single is called Pay the Butcher's Bill. Thanks again for asking, Resi. And it's bloody heavy. Like Dave Nato from The Fourth Wall and the Anti-Nowhere League plays drums on it, and he's a madman. And we distorted his snare. We distorted so much stuff in what he was doing. Most of the musicality from this song is coming from the Blaster Beam. And the Blaster Beam is nasty when it comes to... It's not very controlled, shall we say. And then I sent like 4... I got 4 outputs out of the thing, all distorted through my crap pedal. Sent them down to George Bykos, who's Angelspit's guitarist. He has a studio called Bass Sounds, and he ruined them. they really, as in beautifully, perfectly ruined them. He ran them through he reamped them. Actually, I think I sent him raw tracks. No, they were raw tracks. I didn't put my stuff on them. And he gave me great big guitar sound, but it was blaster beam. So all of this stuff happened together. There are additional drums on there, which are Emax, which is driven through distortion pedals. I'm doing press releases with them. I'm telling fans about them, and they're going onto Bandcamp. The objective of the exercise is to test the water for the new album, which is called The Bastard Gods, which is, I don't know, 6 months away. I don't know yet. And it's testing the water, and it's finding out limitations and how people are reacting it. And either way, I'm gonna do it. And it's all, the whole thing about this album is it's very, very skinny puppy. It's very, very pretty hate machine, but not pretty. Somebody was kind enough to say that. I thought that was funny. It's not dance floor stuff. I'm going to do a remix album as well with it, letting yous know. Yeah, I see you. And they're going to be very, 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 very dance orientated, specifically for clubs. But this stuff is not for clubs. It's for driving in your car when you're really angry after you've had a bad day at work and you don't want to feel better. You just want to be angry. Yeah, and the response has been really good. I actually put it, Pay the Butcher's Bill on Reddit, and I didn't get destroyed. Because normally Reddit just ruins you. And they say shitty things to your face. Really hurtful, nasty things to your face. And I actually got 3 people say, it's good for Angelspit. It doesn't suck. Which was good. So it's interesting. And also, the whole thing about the slower, sexy grind, it's very, very grindy. So the tracks to grinder. They're all over the place. The cover, I'll just say, I'm having a lot of fun with the covers because the cover is a selfie, an AI generated image, and a photo of a Greek statue. And I put the 3 on top of each other, and I will sort of squish my face using old school Photoshop to squish my face onto a Greek and Roman beauty. And it's really interesting that they're not beautiful at all. They look really weird because the ethos, one of the ethos behind the album is at this stage to be creating something that an AI can't create. I just want to enjoy this while we've still got this, because soon AIs are going to be, churning out Two Dark Parks and stuff, and that's great. Yay, progress. But now I want to do something that is still Uncanny Valley and still creepy and still a bit wrong, but still funky as hell. Razzie, I see your hand.
I like it when you get melodic. I think it's a cool space for you. You're singing in that one.
Thank you.
It's a good look. You touched on Spotify and what you did. I don't want to bring in a new topic. I think we're in a good place right now. But for homework, like I've been having thoughts brewing on Spotify and how they treat musicians and how the money flows and where the record companies are involved and stuff. So maybe there's a little bit of homework I'm going to do at least to refine my opinion on that. Okay. Maybe I'll have a rant.
That sounds great. If I can just say, for Spotify, and I've said this before, that if the money going to executives is a problem and people want to boycott it, I think those people should also boycott every single petrol agency in the world that sells gas, every single thing that does insurance, single housing estate. In fact, boycott everything, because that's just how it is. And that's really fucked. And that's a lot of the content of the album is about the emerging underclass, and it's an issue. But I digress. My thing about Spotify is that pitch, and the reason I pitch it, I throw it at Spotify a month before it's released, is that if I get everything right, This will be ready to go to Spotify. It will be on Spotify in my up-and-coming releases mid-next week. So I will have about 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks to pitch it to their editors. And the pitching editor on Spotify is so amazing. It is mind-bogglingly amazing. It is so bloody good. That I would hold on, let me check something here. Yeah, it's so good. I'm just looking at some numbers there. That if you pitch it, and a fun thing to do is to say somebody else is a featured artist, and if they're a featured artist, they'll turn up as well to be able to pitch it. And the trick is have it up there a month or a few weeks, 3 weeks before it's released. If you're on DistroKid, I think it's the middle tier will allow you to do that. Spotify does all this shit for free. I'm with AWOL or The Orchard. And yeah, Mari's spreadsheet, that actually, half that was me. So him and me kicked that spreadsheet out. Yeah, and it's a really good, because he took it and it's fantastic. His development of it's fantastic. But yeah, so that's my thing, is that utilize Spotify. It's massive. Amazon has something similar that pitches artists. It's not as good, and it keeps pitching it about a week after. Spotify stops pitching it the day it gets released. The moment it gets released, it stops. Amazon's keeps going, but Amazon's market share is very, very small compared to, but they're aggressively trying to change that. And Apple has just started trying to pitch artists, but they need so much work on their whole pitching campaign and the whole pitching engine and everything. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about getting your music to people, and the middle persons, the middle management, the middle agents, etc., between you and your audience are going to be taking horrible, terrible money, and they're not always offering you things to justify that cut. But I think Spotify is going towards it. So I don't passionately hate him, but here's Alex.
I just wanted to quickly say thank you to Raziel for recommending this ear trainer app. I've used it and I think it's great and for being free. And they also have a Windows version that's also free, I think.
Awesome. Did anybody have any questions or anything to keep it short? Because we're going to go, and we are rating to MTV TV after this, and it's going to be MTV TV after this, and it's going to be awesome. But does anybody have a short thing they want to bring up, or are we ready to raid? Okay, let's raid. Thank you so much. This time again next week. Just let me very quickly put the pitch for here so you can join us, because it will be amazing. So I got the time right in Berlin as well. I apologize, Alex. But you guys are going on daylight savings time soon, so we have to figure all that craziness out. And if you're interested in Pay the Butcher's Bill, there's a link to it. It's on Angelspit's Bandcamp. Thank you so much for joining us. Diana, when you're ready, let's write to MTV. Your guides, and we'll see you next week. This time, bye, 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 bye.